Is it the truth about dating multiple people, how to prevent the death of your relationships, and why I encourage you to date multiple people, even if you're in a relationship already. Dating comes from the root word data, which means when an envelope or letter was delivered and time-stamped so that it was known to be delivered and when it was delivered. Dating, the notion, comes from the idea you see people on specific dates. So why would I encourage you to date multiple people? Let's begin with the very fundamental of the death of every loving relationship. You've heard me say this before. You know what it is, right? The death of every loving relationship is being, and therefore feeling, taken for granted. Being and being taken for granted is abuse. And if you don't want to be abused, and I don't want to be abused, I strongly encourage you to pay very particular attention to this. When you are seeing someone, because it's not out of all your options you're seeing them, it's because you're in the same bed because it's the only bed, and you take them already as granted to you, and they take you already as granted to them, which is the inevitable result of this. The old relationship model, and I refer to it as old, but it's a standard meaning it's a commonly accepted and widely practiced and commonly practiced form of relationship or sexual relationship. The old dating paradigm is that, hey, actually it's not the old dating paradigm, it's the old relationship paradigm, I refer to it, is that, hey, I will grant myself to you exclusively. In return, you will grant yourself to me exclusively. And therefore, the result which no one talks about is that you both now are taken as already granted. And therefore, the inevitable result is that you will both feel taken for granted. And that is abuse. That is actually one of the sources of abuse in relationship, is that both individuals constituent in the relationship entity are both taken for granted, and that's the beginning of abuse in the relationship. And so why do I encourage you to date multiple people, and what does that have to do with that? It's because for you to be able to not be taken for granted, now leave alone you're not in a relationship. Let's just talk about when you are in a relationship, or if you are in a relationship right now. How will this help you? How will this sentiment help you dating multiple people? When you are in bed, because it's the only bed you have, not because you have multiples of beds that you could be in, you will inevitably cause the death of your relationship, which is being and feeling taken for granted. And you will be pheromonally siblings, familial, and you will lose that sexual tension and that sexual drive that you have, because that's how humans have evolved. There's only one species of our type of ape ancestor, which was a nuclear family, and they are in the savannah and they live in trees, and they operate in nuclear families, and they're not social creatures. And the closest that we are, closest animal that we evolved in, closest ape and monkey that we evolved in, are the bonobos. People originally thought, the evolutionary psychologists originally thought that we evolved from the chimps. Those are our closest relatives. But actually, they're not our closest relative. Our closest relative are the bonobos. And the bonobos, chimps, for example, they would have sex they would enter the rear, and they would only enter the rear because there was no romanticism involved, there was no emotion involved, it was strictly procreation. It was only when the female was in heat. Our closest relative, which is the bonobo monkeys, are the only monkeys that are able to fornicate, have sex, face to face, in missionary position. And they were also able to have sex whether or not they were in estrus or not. Estrus is when the female is in heat, when it's their ovulation period and they they need the sperm of other males so that they can, because they're prepared to have offspring. Their egg has been produced. And so we did not evolve to be nuclear families. We did not evolve to be non-social animals. We are very social animals, and we are very sexual creatures. Now, revisiting my old thinking and, over a decade ago, I recognized that a lot of men whom I interact, or a lot of men in general, believe that women are not sexual creatures. And that's because women, they portray that they're not sexual creatures. But when you talk to women, gentlemen, when you talk to women all around the world recognize that they are very, very sexual. They're incredibly sexual. And there are many sexual formats which they can really, really tremendously enjoy. They may not communicate this with you because there are certain agendas that we have in society, which is the standard of relationships. So why I would encourage you to date multiple people is so that there are many different things that come into play. The pheromonal imprinting that occurs when you are family, essentially a family, when you lose that intensity in the relationship because you're no longer interacting with other females or other males. Women, when you take your partner as already granted to you, you will take on behaviors which are masculine behaviors rather than feminine behaviors. And the reason why I would encourage you to date multiple men is not only to reset the pheromonal imprint, meaning when you come home to your man, you will have that new sense of pheromonal attraction with your man because you're interacting with different males, whether or not you have sex. Remember that dating is simply to see people on specific dates. And so you see people on specific dates for many different reasons. One of the most important reasons you see someone on a specific date or different dates, is to have male friends who you can interact. Facilitate yourself in an environment where you are surrounded by the masculine energy, and so you can reset that pheromonal imprint, number one. Or number two, you can practice your femininity. And that is incredibly important for you to be able to engage in. Without that, if, for example, all you hang out were female friends, then you don't have that opportunity. And you don't facilitate that opportunity, and your relationship doesn't facilitate that. And you can openly communicate this with your partner, and it's important for you to be able to do that. What I mean by practicing your femininity, there are certain feminine things that you do which you engage in when you are attracted to another male. And you may haven't had the opportunity to practice this because you've already been with your partner for many, many different years. What I would encourage you to do, now this is just an opportunity, an introduction for you so you can get yourself to a point where you are not in the same bed with your partner because it's the only bed. Are you sleeping? Ask yourself, are you sleeping in the same bed with your partner because you're attracted to and you want to be in the bed with him, or is it because it's the only bed you have in the house? Another reason why I encourage you to have separate rooms, not because you want to sleep separately, but because you have separate rooms you could be in, and when you are in the same bed, it's because you have another bed and you'd rather be in that bed. For men, what turns men on, it's novelty. Novelty is what turns men on. It's just how we evolutionarily come to be. And while women definitely don't underestimate men's requirement for novelty, gentlemen never underestimate women's requirement for novelty as well. So these are the benefits of dating multiple people. And let's say I don't want to have sex with multiple men. So I would just encourage you to meet friends. That is actually what dating is. It's not necessarily a sexual endeavor, but to meet people in specific dates. Just have friends. And the old dating model, anyway, it's completely not useful. The old dating model is I will vet you and I will take this list and see if you're the kind of person that I want to be with. And so what I would encourage you to do is just be meet people, have male friends and female friends who you go to date with, practice with.